David Smith here with another Flipped Classroom math video. A few tips before we start. Remember that you can slow down or speed up the playback if that helps you follow along. You can also pause the video at any point to catch up with your notes or try the problems before I explain them. Lastly, you could turn on the captions and read my words going along below the bottom of the screen. Today's topic, completing the square. Now, we have done this in an earlier unit on quadratics, but I do find in all my years of teaching mathematics to high school students that this is one of the more complicated or challenging little processes to master. So we're going to spend some time talking about that again right here in the context of the graphs. Okay, so what we do is we convert a standard form quadratic to vertex form by completing the square. So we convert a standard form quadratic, which is f of x, or we could write y there, but I'm using function notation now, so instead of writing y equals, I'm writing f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. This is standard form for a quadratic equation, okay? But we like to go to vertex form. Vertex form tells us a lot of information that allows us to quickly and easily sketch graphs of parabolas. This is much faster than plotting points. So we convert it to vertex form, which you know from an earlier video is f of x equals a times parentheses around x minus h squared plus k. And just to review, the reason this is called vertex form is that you can pull the vertex right from the equation. You don't need to do any calculations. So the vertex is just hk, these two numbers. One thing to always remember, there's a negative here, there's no negative there. So whatever number is here, you change the sign when you put it here when you want to list the vertex. Okay, what I'd like to do is walk you through a series of steps where we'll convert a standard form quadratic to vertex form. So convert f of x equals x squared minus 2x plus 5 to vertex form. You might see an instruction like that on an exercise set or on a quiz or on a test. Okay, so here are the first three steps that get you to vertex form. You need to find this thing called b over 2 squared. If you remember when we completed the square to solve quadratics, this was an essential piece. So we need to first just find what b over 2 squared is. So in this case, our b is the negative 2, so b over 2 squared is negative 2 over 2 squared. Now the squared is on the outside, so we have to figure out what the fraction is first before we square it. So this is going to be negative 1 squared, which is 1. Okay? So we've done step 1. We found what the value of b over 2 squared is by doing these steps. And it's just 1. Pretty simple. Okay, this part is a little bit tricky. We want to add and subtract it to the equation. Okay? And what I'm going to say here is to the right-hand side. That's the abbreviation for right-hand side. Our textbook does it that way. So we're going to add and subtract b over 2 squared to the right-hand side. So the left-hand side is f of x equals. Now I'm going to carry forward with all my stuff. X squared minus 2x. Now I add it right after the x term. So I'm going to add b over 2 squared. Here's my 1. So I'm going to add it. And then I'm going to subtract it right away again. Minus 1, and we have a plus 5 out there. Now that's a little weird, but we really didn't change our equation. We just added 1 and subtracted 1 at the same time to the same side. So we didn't change it at all. However, the thing is that this deal right here, if you remember from our complete the square lesson, this is called a perfect square. And to review really quickly, what that means is that this three-term quadratic expression, not counting these, we're going to leave these out of this for a minute, this is a perfect square, and it can be factored simply, okay? So that's what this third step is. Factor first step, combine other numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor this and combine those. So bring it down, f of x equals. Now, to factor this, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 1 that add to negative 2. And the truth is, it's only one number. That number is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is our positive 1. Negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2. So that falls under the factoring pattern like so, x minus 1 squared. So this binomial, if you FOIL that, you're going to wind up back here with that. Now, combining the other numbers, these two guys were left out of that. We factored these three terms into this, so these two guys just come down. So minus 1 and plus 5 is plus 4. And we are now in vertex form. We went from standard form to vertex form by completing the square. We can state our vertex now. Our vertex is, change the sign on that one, 1, comma, 4. And so now you could graph this parabola, you could create a sketch of this parabola quickly and easily without plotting points. What I'd like to have you do now is try to do this yourself. So I've given you a different quadratic equation. Now it's f of x equals x squared plus 4x plus 1. And what I'd like you to do is convert that one to vertex form. So look at your notes, work carefully, see if you can get all the way through that. Okay, let's take a look. So our first step was to find b over 2 squared. So b over 2 squared. This is step 1. This is going to be my b term, which is 4 over 2 squared. So 4 over 2 squared. 4 over 2 is just 2. So we got 2 squared. So b over 2 squared is 4. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Step number 2 was add and subtract that from the right-hand side. So not from here, but from this side, we're going to add a 4 and we're going to subtract a 4. So we're going to write f of x equals x squared plus 4x. Now I'm going to add that 4 and subtract that 4 and bring down my plus 1 from above. So I haven't changed my equation. These two things just cancel themselves out. But we like this, okay? Because this right there is our perfect square. And that's going to factor down. So this was step 3. I'll give you a little tip here. This is always going to be like x plus or minus something, depending on the sign. So this is a plus, so that's a plus. And if you've done your complete the square trick right, where you added your b over 2 squared, it's always going to be half of the b term. So this is that squared, and then minus 4 and plus 1 is minus 3. Presto. So I hope with the explanations, it kind of feels a little bit better, that you're feeling like you could do some of these, which is what we're going to do when we meet next. Let's write our vertex, change the sign on that one, so it's at minus 2, minus 3. Now we can sketch this graph. Now that you've finished the video, take a moment to jot down any questions that you have so you can bring them to our next class and get some help. You can also watch the video again to perfect your understanding. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button down below, and if you'd like to help me grow my YouTube channel, please click subscribe.